Every visitor arrives carrying a story about why they came. The house listens for the story beneath it. The Audible Archives, feathered by Raven. Initial entry: the first feather. The archive was never meant to be empty. I know this because the first page appeared before I ever picked up the pen. There was no name, no date, no explanation. Only a single sentence written across the page. What is hidden will eventually ask to be witnessed. I spent a long time wondering who wrote it. I searched the ink. I studied the handwriting. I examined the paper, but the answer was never found in the page. It was found in the question. Because every record in this archive begins the same way. Someone arrives carrying a story. Not the truth. The story. The story they have repeated so many times that it feels like their identity. I'm the one who always gets left. I'm the one who has to be strong. I'm the one who failed. I'm the one who wasn't enough. But the house has taught me something. A story can be true and still not be complete. These pages are not written to judge the people who enter. They are written to remember the moment when something inside them changed. The moment a question became a doorway. The moment a wound stopped being only a wound. The moment a person discovered they were standing beside the answer they had been searching for. I am Raven. I keep the records. I do not create the transformation. I do not decide what someone becomes. I simply preserve what remains after the truth has been heard. This is the first page. The first feather. The beginning of the archive. The Audible Archives, feathered by Raven. Entry 001. The weight she called love. The first visitor whose record I preserved arrived carrying something heavy, not because the world had placed it on her, because she had mistaken carrying it for being loved. Her name was Amina. She believed love meant endurance. She believed patience meant silence. She believed if she gave enough of herself away, eventually someone would recognize what remained. The house did not ask her why she stayed. It asked a different question. What part of yourself did you leave behind in order to be chosen? She did not answer immediately. Most visitors do not. Truth is rarely loud when it first arrives. Sometimes it is a whisper sitting beneath years of explanation. The house showed her memories she had carefully organized into reasons. The moments she called compromise. The moments she called forgiveness. The moments she called love. But the house has a way of removing names from things. And when the names disappeared, she saw them differently. Sacrifice. Fear. Longing. A desire to be enough for someone who had never asked her to be. That was the moment everything shifted. Not because someone told her to leave. Not because someone gave her permission. Because she finally understood. She was not losing love. She was returning to herself. The page closed differently than it began. At the top, where there had once been a question, there was now a sentence. I was never difficult to love. I was simply asking the wrong place to prove it. I recorded the entry. The house remained silent. It had already said enough.
So I write, and I ask the page, was I carrying sorrow or trying to outrun blame? And maybe grief isn't punishment, maybe love stayed behind without permission.
The Audible Archives. Feathered by Raven. Entry 002. The apology he never received. The second visitor arrived carrying a conversation that had ended years ago. Except it had never truly ended. Some words do not disappear when they are left unsaid. They wait. His name was Emmanuel. He was known as the person everyone could depend on. The helper. The protector. The one people called when they needed strength. But strength has a shadow. Sometimes the person everyone depends on forgets they are allowed to need something too. The house did not show Emmanuel his failures first. It showed him his responsibility. The difference was important, because guilt and responsibility may look similar from a distance. But one keeps you trapped. The other allows you to move. He carried a moment from his past. A moment where he wondered if one different choice could have changed everything. A moment he replayed so many times that it became a room he lived inside. The house asked him, "Are you honoring what happened? Or punishing yourself for surviving it?" The question stayed with him. Because sometimes the apology we spend our lives waiting for is the one we never realized we needed to give ourselves. The house did not erase his memory. It did not rewrite his past. It simply allowed him to see the story from a place beyond pain. When he left, he did not leave without regret. He left without being owned by it. The final words written on his page were, "Some burdens are carried because we loved deeply, but love was never meant to become a sentence." Another record preserved. Another truth witnessed. The archive grows. The Audible Archives. Feathered by Raven. Entry 03. The woman he never met. Some records begin with a wound. Camille's began with a question. Why does he keep setting me up to fail? Questions like these are interesting because they often arrive carrying their own answers. Camille believed she was being measured against a version of herself she had already worked to leave behind. And in some ways, she was. There was a woman he remembered. A woman who reacted differently. A woman who carried different frustrations. A woman who had not yet learned what Camille was beginning to understand about herself. But the house does not only examine what others see, it examines what we still need others to see. Camille arrived exhausted from feeling like every part of her life had to account for someone else. The meals, the routines, the responsibilities, the quiet adjustments that accumulate until a person begins wondering where they ended and someone else began. She believed leaving would answer the question, so she prepared. She found a place. She She made arrangements. She stood at the edge of a new life. But she did not cross the threshold. Then later he did. And that was the moment the question changed. Because it was one thing to imagine walking away. It was another thing to watch someone else choose the door. The house noticed something important. Camille had spent so much time trying to prove she could exist without him, that she had never stopped to ask who she was beyond the struggle. Then came the work. Counseling. Reflection. Application. Change. Camille did not simply wish to become different. She practiced becoming different. She met parts of herself she had avoided. She learned new ways to respond. She became someone her former self would have barely recognized. But transformation carries a difficult truth. The people who knew the old version of you may not always witness the moment you become new. Sometimes they continue responding to the person they remember. And sometimes we continue asking them to introduce us to ourselves. The house asked Camille, if no one recognizes who you have become, does she become any less real? The room became quiet, because the answer had never belonged to him. When I closed the archive ledger, I wrote, Camille believed she was competing against the person who could not see her change. The house revealed she was competing against the part of herself that still needed to be seen. She did not leave with a victory over another person. She left with something far more valuable. Recognition. Her own. Raven.
I became the woman I was always meant to be. But when I look into his eyes, I see a stranger looking back at me. Why does he keep setting me up to fail?
Before you leave the house, if this story found you, and share the someone who needs to hear it.
Crow.